Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu and peace out to the rest of you. Hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. I'll say this rather quickly because shouts out to the Roger Report Live and also to Irvin Reed and to Afro National. They got me to realize something. And Crimson Cure also shouts out to it, got me to realize something. You must go through a special trauma to be a black man, not necessarily to be a black woman. You go through a trauma of being black to be a black woman. And maybe being chosen last by all men is traumatic for women. Maybe that is the case. But the reason I don't have much sympathy for the Western sisters only because they act like it doesn't mean nothing no way. And if you put up that front, I'll hold you to it. Now, I will state this for the record. Yeah, being a black man does give you, in the West especially, gives you more of a trauma. And I think if you're back home on the continent, you're probably going to go through it too. Because you still encounter racism from people that aren't black when you're in Africa. And you will deal with the effects of colonization and depopulation of the slave trade on your local economy. But many of the ladies on the continent, as we know, are still exposed to the materialism and things are still expensive on the continent. And so therefore, you're just under all this pressure. And I'm aware of that. So I don't really think that there is any place where you're a black man that does not involve going through some trauma that follows you more and in greater percentage and proportion because you're black. Or having something, or rather because the racist are racist. I don't know of a place where that's not the case. So in any case, Grace Jabbari has shown this. And that's going to lead me to the next point. Crimson Cure put the video out in which Stephen A. Smith was talking about Anthony Edwards' plight right now. I don't know who that lady is. I mean, hell, I didn't know who Anthony Edwards is until I heard the name on Crimson Cure's video, but I heard of his plight. So apparently they had a relationship and she doesn't want to delete the baby and she's mad because he asked her to do it. And I realized for the most part that all it really means is this, and I told you this before, I realized this a long time ago. What is it that they want? Well, when you look at this pattern, Average Man Unplugged talked about this as well. He begged a woman to not delete his baby a long time ago, and she did it. This man offered a woman money to delete what might be his baby, and she calls him a monster. It is only about what you don't want. You keep making the mistake of thinking that a lot of these ladies are just acting in, or the hyenas really, are just acting in their own self-interest. It's not that. Many times their self-interest is specifically what is against what you want. They'll act like it's a self-interest, but in reality, that's a smokescreen. They want what you don't want. You want to be a dad, and all you have to do when they tell you that they're pregnant is say, oh my God, I never thought I was going to be able to be a dad. And now not only my dad, you're the mom. She's like, what is that supposed to mean? I never thought I'd get someone like you pregnant. That's what you start acting all geeked out by the thought of it. And she'll be like, ew, this guy. That's what you do. That's if you're really trying to get her to delete the baby. Now, I don't tell you to try to get them to do it. I'll tell you, don't stick it in them without a marriage contract. But the point I'm making is that if you really didn't want to be a dad, then you must act like you want to be one. And if you really want to be a dad, you got to act like you don't want to be one. That's all there is to it, because they're going to decide on whatever they can tell you don't want. That will drive the decision, and they will act like it's something else going on. I mean, is he a golden egg laying goose, Mr. Edwards, with that contract he signed? Okay, yeah, he is. But you take the money away, and there is still whatever the hell he doesn't want. If she already did this before, then the only reason he's a monster is because he might find himself relieved at not having to raise a baby at this point in his life or pay for one. That's all it is. There's nothing else to it. And we keep thinking that they're looking out for themselves and what they want in their biological imperatives. No. A lot of times the studies have already shown that they don't like seeing men happy. Well, what the hell do you think everything else is about then? And I saw, several manosphere guys have pointed to that. Sandman did. This ain't even just the black manosphere. Sandman talked about this. Then it was either Replicant Fish or Manosphere Highlights Daily that made a reference to that later on. And then I saw an interview in which they were asking women, what gives you the ick? And she was like, I don't know, seeing a guy happy. She was a ditzy dingbat, but she was clear about that. So when you realize this, you stop tolerating the bullshit. And you as black men have everything designed for you to be miserable anyway. So you really have to guard whatever little happiness you may be able to find and sustain. And you've done a pretty good job when you compare that to the odds that are against you. Now, that leads me to the next point. One of the reasons, and they're talking about this on the Roger Report Live, what they did, one of the reasons that a DA, especially a black assistant or black DA, may have for going after Mr. Majors is that not only are certain liberal elements willing to pay for non-black immigrants, but they're willing to do so at the expense of black men who are loaded. Now, let's look at what that means. If you think about this long enough, this is what winds up happening and being the case. I realize now why more brothers are making it into the middle class. There is one, our effort, ingenuity in our industry. It's not going to be free. But number two, I also realize that for this to be the case, people are probably stepping out of our way to a certain extent. Now, why would they do it? Well, some Somali brothers actually told me about this a while ago when I said that if you are a black man and you make money, they come after you. Somali man said they do this even if you are black and you're not American. He said they are actually doing this across the board. If you're black and you're black and you ain't 9AY and you're a guy, they're coming for you. They don't want you to keep what you make. They want you to make it so they can come take it. He told me over a year ago about this motive, and he was right. I missed that coworker. He left to go back to the States to earn a bit of money. And his plan was to go back to Somalia because he said friends of his that had made good money from companies that they opened up started getting visits from the FBI. Like, how were you making all this money? And they pretty much said, OK, you know what? We made it this way and it's legal. But if you got a problem with it, tell you what, we'll pack up and go. We didn't do anything wrong. But if you really don't want us to make this money here in your jurisdiction, then we'll go make it elsewhere because we already legally earned enough to where we can get off to a good start back home. You want us to repatriate these funds back to Africa? And the Fed surprisingly were like, we want the money. So they said, OK, suppose we just go ahead and just shut the business. We keep it, but we shut the business. We keep what we made, but we just shut the business. And the agents that came to see them said, yeah, that would be evidence that you're not doing anything wrong. So they sold it. They kept what they made. They sold it for more money, and they went back home. Meaning they went to Somalia. This man told me more. Shared with him some information. He shared with me more. And I realized that these folks, they don't mind stepping out of the way. Now, why would they kind of step out of the way a little bit of us getting to the bag for which we're already working anyway? It does make sense. Here's how. They need to do certain things to pay for certain, or they need to take it from somewhere to pay for certain things. But they also understand that even though on average white men make more money, if they went after them the same way, white men will stop working that hard. They will say, well, look, this is what I'm not. And I'll give white folk credit for one thing. In general, most white folk will tell you if they have ever been financially good in life, one thing they will say is, I will not work hard to be poor. We black folk are just now getting there. We ain't fully there yet mentally. So they know that they got a better chance of getting us to work hard to wind up being poor again than they do of getting them folk to work hard to be poor. See, we're still in the early stages in which we're excited to make money. So they'll get out the way, and then they'll show up later on and be like, we don't believe that's yours. And we're going to make your life hard and hell for you if you don't come out of it some way. Or we'll just make it to where you can't make that same money anymore. So there's a financial incentive to do what they did in the lynching of Jonathan Majors. Just statistically speaking, he's not likely to get jail time. However, he was statistically unlikely to be convicted based on the evidence, but he got convicted. Look what happened. So they still want to find ways to use us to generate the output for them, and they don't do the work that is necessary for the input to get the output. In other words, they still want to find ways to capitalize off of our work and labor and industry. That's still what they're designed to do. They do it to each other, but they're damn sure going to focus on us. So even though their men make up a bigger percentage of the population and make more wealth on average, they do know that if they went after these dudes as much, they'd get less of a result. That they do realize. Governments are making a killing off of child support alone. They don't want modesty. You start talking about sexual restraint, or hell, just modesty for that matter, chastity. And they're going to that's going to bother them, even though if you're doing such, you would still work to look after your kids. It still bothers them to a certain extent because it doesn't force the money to go through the moms. Next thing I wanted to talk to you all about, third thing, and then I'm done. And I realize I'm banging out a lot today, but we finally got done with classes for the most part. So when I am done with work, then I'm done with work. So that's why I have a bit more time. Last thing is this. One thing about Grace Jabbari is, as I stated, she is the daughter of an Iranian, quasi white adjacent, but not quite white Iranian. Grace Jabbari, like Western black women for that matter, is very likely to feel like she owns a black man if she chooses him. Western women in general tend to have that feeling that if they do choose a black man, they own that black man. All they got to do is choose him. All they got to do is claim him, and they own him. She did that. She showed up when he didn't have much in life. She did put in that loyalty sweat. But when he said, listen, we're moving up now, and I need you to move up with me in your decorum, she wasn't going to do that. I didn't know that he had told her that. I thought it was a joke when I first heard that he said that I need you to be like Coretta Scott King or Michelle Obama. I thought it was a joke when I heard it. No, apparently that's what he said. And I'm going to let you know now that these folks that don't view us as equals, and Iranians do not view black people as equals. Don't get it twisted. I don't have to tell you about white folk, but Iranians don't either. So she comes from white folk and Iranians, like real white folk and Iranians, after whom the Aryan Brotherhood have named themselves, from the Aryan people. She's coming from these two paradigms. She's claimed a black man because, she probably wasn't getting the kind of place she wanted from her own, her mother's ethnicity of men. And so she realized, I'm going to have to go elsewhere. So let me look for a brother that's got talent and some ambition, but he ain't got much now. And so she did that. But when it came time to actually change behavior publicly so that he doesn't lose it, she said, oh, hell no. You don't tell me that. See, people like that don't let you tell them to do better when you're black. That's what I wanted you all to realize. You're not allowed to tell them to do better when you're black. Now, where I live, no one's allowed to tell the Bedouin male to do better. They're polite about it when you tell them. If they realize that you do want their benefit and you're not their enemy, and you say this, they'll thank you for your concern. And they'll say, yes, I will, inshallah. But they don't actually do it. But that doesn't matter to them if you're white or black. It's just about them. They're Bedouin males, and they're not going to do it. They don't make changes. They don't change the way they think or they behave to get a different outcome. They just bother you until they get what they want. Sometimes you have to close the door on them, and not in front of other people, but privately use the F word and tell them to stop effing bothering you about something because they didn't put the work in for it. What I wanted you to realize, though, gentlemen, is that in this case here, if you're a white and you tell them that, they're not going to do what you said to get better. If you're black, if you're a foreign Arab, they're not going to do what you said to get better. You pretty much have to be their dad and beat the black off of them, or the white off of them, or the Bedouin off of them, whatever it is. Beat the stubbornness out of them. That's generally what it takes. And hell, I got a set of twins. Two of my students are a pair of twins, and they will even say that there's certain things that dad just doesn't bother them about because he knows what they're capable of. Imagine these kids having the nerve to sit up in a culture like this and look a teacher in the face and tell the teacher this. And these two they never get better in their writing. They'll never improve in their writing because they're not afraid of anybody. So I have to tell them, your writing is terrible. It is bad. And I had to let them know the rubric was lenient for this particular school year. But when they get into the core curriculum, they don't have to grade their writing on a rubric, and they'll just throw the stuff back and say, your English is bad. Go fix it. And they don't have to tell them what to fix. They don't have to give them feedback on what's wrong with their English in their writing. They have to go back and find out what that is themselves and fix it. And when they have to write something for an exam with lockdown browser and they can't go to Grammarly or Quillbot, then they just fail. But it's not because I'm black. When you were dealing with some of these other groups of people, you can't be from a background like ours and tell someone they got to do better. They'll barely, even these folks here, they'll let a black person tell them and treat them the same as they would a white person. But these folks here, they're not going to let somebody from Bangladesh tell them you got to do better. See, here Africans aren't even at the bottom. To them, people from Bangladesh and Pakistan and India are at the bottom. So I wanted you all to know about that, understand that, and I hope that this helps you navigating and moving forward as we become a more international race, not just one ethnicity within, but a more international race of people. I hope that this helps out. As always, thank you for listening. Black heart, black mind, blackout, assalamu alaikum, and, black heterosexual non-select male power just because they don't like it. and Black Patriarch until extinction of Judgment Day. Thank you for flying with us on Jet Black Airways, where jet black is also a verb. Keep jetting black with us until the wings and the wheels fall off. Gender justice forever.